Hi everyone, welcome to Active Directory Solution Center. My name is Sai. I'm a subject matter expert in identity management or Microsoft Directory Services. My day job is I'm into infrastructure enterprise consulting, focusing on Microsoft infrastructure services stack. It's going on for 13 plus years, focusing on migrations, implementations, consolidations, divestments, and different projects. Today we will look at the common Active Directory consolidation question most customer has. It's like, I want to consolidate my sites into fewer sites. Can I do it? What are the implications? How this can be done? Well, yes. The short answer is yes, we can consolidate sites into fewer sites, but there are lots and loads of analysis work that needs to be performed on the site which is targeted for consolidation. In an example, we're going to consider a site A and site B. Site A being the primary site or a data center site, and site B being a branch site or the child site. So customer wants to migrate, or customer wants to consolidate the domain controllers in the site B to site A. So this is the activity, and customer has this question like, how easy is that? And do I need to really bother about my domain controllers? And why can't I simply move my domain controllers back into the site A, which is my primary data center? The answer is no. You're not supposed to do it without analyzing site B performance impacts. So when we start up the project, so there are few considerations that needs to be taken care of. So few analysis work needs to be panned out and needs to be followed. So such as what are the implications to my application stack? What are the implications to my network? I mean, how good is my network to support the branch side to the parent side consolidation? How many number of users? What is the amount of users? What is the client affinity? And that the site B has, and what is the workload on the domain controllers at this point of time? So you need to understand the performance impacts in a larger state. So it's the performance and the hard coding. So and what else? How do I stage domain controller? So you migrate the DCs from site A to site B to the primary data center. So you don't have, or do you need to really go ahead and order the new hardware, or can I use the existing virtualization tier? So that's another question which customer should understand. Like, can I put the DCs back into the physical server, or is this the right time to virtualize domain controllers? What is the security model? Well, how secure is this transition or the consolidation is all about? So what's the secure channel between the site A and the site B? It's not the domain controller secure channel I'm referring here. I'm talking about if there are any critical apps and if they need to send in LDAP. So do I have a substantial security layer established between site B and site A? What are my operational costs? So how well I need to expand my organization units in the Active Directory. So how many number of guys I need to staff into the primary data center to take care of these servers, the physical service, or maybe virtual service, maybe in this case. So what is the monitoring effort? So do I have an existing monitor utility or monitoring tool with the server cals, and will they support these migrations or these consolidations? So these doesn't looks really complex, but they are different scenarios or different steps which needs to be taken care. So I'll be covering them one by one in a phase wise. So the first one would be the application stack. So this is an activity which needs customers to understand. Do we have in homegrown apps which are hard coded to these domain controller names and the IP addresses? check mark yes or no if it is yes, and you have to go back to your developers and say, hey developer, please change, or you have to change the hard-coded DC name to whatever it may be. Or if you're doing a pure consolidation, like you don't want these domain controllers back into the data center, you just need to rely on the existing DCs, so the equation changes for applications. So you need to ensure you put across the new domain controller names and remove the old hard-coded DC names. But if you say you're going to just move these DCs from site B to site A, still remains, the name would still remains the same, but I would bet that the IP address would definitely change in the primary data centers with what I see with different migrations happen. So customer doesn't really keep the same IP address range in the sites of the brand side to be in the parent side. So these are the few of the considerations. So if you change the domain controller name, does my app has an intelligent way of querying the remote domain controller? So we may not know. So what sort of an application they have coded? So these are some of the analysis work that you need to perform on the application layer. And what is the performance? So when the user logs on, he enters his username and the password. What is the amount? What is the time required for a successful log on to his application? So for example, a user might be taking 5 minutes before, and now he takes like 10 minutes. So that's really not acceptable. So you have to draw an acceptable range and convince the developers, or maybe the users, the end user, saying like, well, you're going to see a minute delay now. The reason is like you have moved the domain controllers. Is that acceptable? So these things you have to understand. So, and the network. So when I say the network, so how network is really relative to the client affinities. Client affinity is the amount of time the client logs on to the Windows operating system and queries the domain controller and logs on successfully. So if the profiles have roaming profiles and it's loaded with the logon scripts, or we don't know. So it depends on the scenario, and you need to evaluate the performance of the client operating systems. So we have different tools. Microsoft have different tools to perform these functionalities. Like we run WPR, Windows Performance Recorder, and analyze the logon performance, boot performance, in different performance of the operating systems. And then if you're happy with these questions, and if you say, well, I mean, all these things are being covered and this is the right time, I'm going to move my domain controllers, but still there are tons of activities that needs to be done. How does my DNS really comes into play? So how do I need to design my DNS now, because my clients are getting pointed to, or my apps are getting pointed to the DNS. So you need to understand scripts, apps, clients need to be rebind to the new DNS or existing DNS, and the DNS names may be same, but the IP addresses change, or you may have like a new DNS server names and new IP addresses coming in. So you need to understand what is the challenge of moving or consolidation of this domain controller. So back at the data center, so once you have decided, well, I'm going to move this, but you have to take a chance, or you have to take a choice between the physical domain controllers versus the virtual domain controller. So with the introduction of virtualization like VMware, we have hypervisor, and different vendors have started their own virtualization stack layers. You need to understand whether you can stage the domain controllers on the physical server, or you have to go with the virtual infrastructure in place. And you need to understand what is the security, what is the group policy, do I need to lock down my domain controllers, or do I need to lock down the users, and what is the capacity planning for that? So it's overall capacity planning you need to analyze and understand. So What's my operation? So do I need to enable a specific a separate SCOM server to monitor my domain controllers, or do I have an existing monitoring tool which adds up to this capability and starts monitoring my domain controller? So these are a few of the things in implementation. You need to understand, you need to run the tools again, you need to run the performance tools again to analyze and understand the impact of the domain controller migration and the movement. I hope these are the few sections of few critical things that needs to be evaluated for migrations or consolidations. I hope this is really useful, and I'm going to come back with more series. Have a good day ahead. Cheers.